Hi, Kat.
Hi, Tiffany.
So I don't know if I ever told you, but I used to work at a think tank in DC. I know we
Yeah.
talked about that.
Yeah.
I worked for the democracy program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace.
That's awesome.
I was like the admin, so I wasn't the
But
researcher.
still, yeah.
I did marketing stuff basically. Um, and so, for this episode, we're talking about Citizens United, and which has a lot to do with democracy. Democracy's on a lot of people's minds. And it's funny because I recognize a lot of people in this book that I read. Like, I recognize a lot of names. I'm like, oh yeah, I had an event with that guy, or like I was in the same room with that person, or
Oh,
like
wow.
whatever. I organized when I was there. I organized events and publications for like basically many of the leading democracy researchers and policymakers in the world. Um, I also got to meet Jon Stewart because of it.
Ooh,
That was really cool.
that sounds awesome.
Yeah, one of our researchers, Sarah Chase, was featured on The Daily Show back
Oh,
when
wow. Yeah.
the original Daily Show. So we got to go, and yeah, it was so cool.
That's awesome.
But because of that, I've heard a lot of warnings about our democracy and just being around it.
Yeah.
I was even there when Trump won the first time,
Wow.
and let me tell you, it was a sober day in that
Yeah.
office.
Yeah.
I literally wore black.
Yeah.
Um, and so all that to say, I'm not an expert, but I've been around it a little bit, and it's sort of like my past life is what it feels like. And I wanted to talk about one warning that Bernie Sanders has been talking about for a while, and I have a lot of respect for Bernie Sanders, and that is Citizens United, which,
Yep.
if you've heard of it, you've heard of it. You may not know the details of it, though.
I don't. Yeah. I feel like I've had like a newspaper article or two worth,
Yeah.
or like a Colbert report,
Right.
right? Bit about it, but I don't know it.
It's super nuanced and interesting and also extremely complicated. So I will definitely be giving like the, elementary version, which I think is what people who listen to this podcast would expect
Right.
or want because
Yes.
good Lord,
They might just be turning it off now. They're like, this isn't funny.
yeah, we're not lawyers over
No,
here.
no,
So
just writers, just marketing writers
marketing writers.
with very interesting backgrounds.
Yes, exactly. And so we're going to talk about what is it? What is Citizens United? How does it affect our elections? And how does that in turn affect any climate change policies from being enacted?
Fair.
Welcome to Greening Up My Act. Okay. So there's that.
Perfect intro, I think.
Okay.
I do want to preface this by saying that Tiffany is sick and I was sick
Yes.
last week, so you might hear some coughing. We'll try to mute our mics, but
I think everyone's sick.
Yeah,
it's
basically.
so crazy.
it's
It's
just
like
going around.
my elementary school that I went to when I was a kid, and my niece and my nephew go there now, was closed because so many kids were sick.
That's so scary.
I've never heard of that before.
Oh man, well, got a measles outbreak in West Texas.
Ugh,
So
great.
yeah, I think last week when I heard about it, 48 people were sick and 13 people were hospitalized, and they were all unvaccinated. So, and we're at I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but working for public health, we knew this was coming because when you get to under 90% vaccination for kindergartners, like if 90% of kindergartners aren't vaccinated, at least that many every year, your chances of an outbreak like skyrocket. So it's basically like at 89% or 85% vaccination rate rather than 100% or higher than 90%. There's like a 100% chance of an outbreak. So,
And if you're vaccinated, you won't get it, or you still could?
no, I think generally, from my understanding, it's not like with the flu shot because
Yeah.
measles is not
Yeah,
something that
that's what I
changes a
figured.
strain.
I'm
Yeah.
just thinking about Charlie, so
Yeah,
I don't think we're have to worry about that too much. But you
is
never know.
she vaccinated?
Oh yeah, I mean she's gotten every vaccine. That
Okay, good.
The
Yeah,
doctors
then
threw at her.
she's safe.
Okay.
I mean, I can tell you some facts about measles real quick before we go into Citizens
Sure.
United. It's so contagious that, first of all, it stays in the air if somebody sneezes for 2 hours after they sneeze. It's still around. And it's so contagious that unvaccinated people who are exposed to it, 9 out of 10 of them will get it. Which, like, COVID was like 3 out of 10 or something. You know, like measles is so contagious.
Wow.
And don't quote me on that statistic about COVID, but it is one of the most contagious diseases in the world. Also takes out small children very easily. High fever, you know, the rash is the thing most people know, but very high fever, gastrointestinal issues, sneezing, you know, and high rates of hospitalization. And it also wipes out your immunomemory. So if you get measles, any cold you've been exposed to, any other virus that you've developed immunity to, gone. Even vaccines that you've had. If you catch legit measles, the measles disease wipes out your immunomemory.
Oh my God.
So even if, like, say, for some reason your parents didn't vaccinate you against measles, but they did against COVID.
Yeah.
Like, that vaccination memory would be wiped out.
Whoa.
From catching measles. So it's terrifying. And people are like, I don't like a vaccination. And, like, it's completely safe. I mean, no vaccine is completely 100% safe. There's some risk of side effects, but they're so low, especially compared to what actual measles can do to you, that it's just shocking to me that get your kids vaccinated.
That's
if you
insane.
grew
I
up
love how you were like, is she vaccinated? I'm like, do you know me?
I wasn't
Have
sure
you
she was
met me?
old enough, because that's the scary thing is children who aren't old enough to get the because it takes 2 shots, right?
Well, I don't know then. I mean, she's 4 almost.
Yeah,
so
it's usually after the age of 2.
Okay.
Yeah, and they have to get it before kindergarten usually.
Yeah.
But if you grew up in a household that didn't vaccinate you for measles, get your measles vaccine. Because the other thing is, even if you're not that sick with it, I mean, if you have the vaccine, you're not going to get sick with it, as far as I know. Or if you do, you'll have like a sneeze. I mean, but you can spread it to unvaccinated people and kill babies. Basically, is what it does. It's just a child killer. So anyway, I'm very pro-vaccine.
Yeah, I know. You're probably gonna, if anybody's watching YouTube, you'll see me blowing my nose a bunch. But anyway,
so I have to say also that we're not in the same room, even though it sounds like we are. So
yeah.
But I had some gunk last week, maybe the flu, and I think this is the flu that Tiffany has this week. So
yeah, it is.
If you're going through it as well, we are in solidarity with you.
Yeah, and my God, there was it was just such an emotional roller coaster of a weekend because Charlie was sick and she was so grumpy, and I was sick and so grumpy, and it was just like everybody was miserable.
So we're here to record this podcast
here
about
we are.
our favorite topic, the fall of democracy through Citizens United.
Oh my God. I will say it's a lot more nuanced than I thought.
That's fair.
Yeah, and this is going to be a 2-parter, so we're going to get into the nuance more next episode.
Okay.
This is more like an entry, like an intro, like here's what it is.
Cliff notes.
Because yes, because it's a lot in the brain, and so I think even for people listening, it's like, okay, I'll get the intro this week, and then next week I can kind of dive into deeper. Okay, so sources. I looked at the Brennan Center. They had basically just like an explainer piece on Citizens United. The More Perfect podcast, great. I'd never listened to them before, but they had a really good episode about Citizens United, and they actually interviewed the people who, like, Citizens United, the people who were suing.
Oh, wow, the citizens, yeah.
Yeah, so it was really interesting. It's actually a nonprofit. I didn't know that. Yeah, a very politically biased nonprofit, but what's new?
They're out there. They're allowed.
Yeah, so I use them a lot for this episode especially, The Federal Election Commission, they have just resources on their website that I used. The Congressional Research Service, they're fantastic. They hopefully will still be around.
If they exist tomorrow. Yeah.
But they're really great. I used to use them when I was working at Carnegie for stuff. So they just have like very, very clear and easy to understand for normal people reports. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's complicated, right? But it's still understandable because they have a whole list of definitions and you're like, oh, thank you. Thank you for that.
I didn't know what this meant. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I also read a book called Plutocrats United, Campaign Money, the Supreme Court, and the Distortion of American Elections. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to talk more about the book next time. But it was, I will say, hard on the brain.
Yeah.
But good. Yeah, we'll get into that book. Okay, so what is Citizens United? Do you want to just hazard a guess, or do you want me to just not even go there? So I can just start.
Yeah, maybe just, I mean, because it's been a long time since I even thought about it. So I know it's a court decision.
Yes.
Okay.
Very good. So it was a Supreme Court decision. It was Citizens United, like I mentioned, was a nonprofit group. So it was a nonprofit called Citizens United, which is so mind-boggling to me because we all think of it as Citizens
a corporation.
United.
Yes,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, and it's a nonprofit. So Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission. It was decided on January 21st, 2010. So it's been around for about 15 years. Is my math right? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
I might be speaking in tongues today because of the flu.
The flu.
But...
flu tongues. They're the best.
I'm going to try not to. So it's one of the most controversial Supreme Court cases ever in the history of our country because it allowed corporations to advertise for candidates of their choice with limitless dollars. So they can spend as much of their money as they want.
Wow.
Which, when you say it like that, just sounds insane. It overturned precedent, so it was very surprising for everybody. And this was 2010, so the court was much more evenly split. And in terms of like conservative versus Democrat. And so it also paved the way for super PACs. So super PACs, if you don't know what that is, it's fine. I will explain it later. But super PACs were not a thing before Citizens United. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because 2010 was like right after I graduated. And I remember like hearing all of these things, but I didn't really follow it totally closely. So I had like, boys on the mind or whatever. I don't know. But...
or like a career or something.
Yeah. Well, I guess I was working. Was I at Carnegie? Not quite yet, no. I was early 20s trying to figure out my life.
Oh yeah. I was mid 20s.
Yeah. Actually, I think I was studying abroad. That's why I wasn't even in this country. Anyway.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. So here's the background on Citizens United. We'll get into the background, then we'll take a break, then we'll talk about one of the craziest parts of it that like really opened my eyes to why they made the decision that they did. Because everybody thinks of it as this like, basically in my mind, the way it's framed is the Supreme Court is evil. Is that how you view it too?
That's basically how I have like that they're,
Yeah. And
that they don't care about human beings in the United States.
Yeah, they'd rather have corporations be labeled as humans than have humans be humans. But it's interesting. It's not quite that clear or that black and white. Okay, so the background. The case originated when Citizens United, which is a nonprofit, wanted to air and advertise a film that was critical of Hillary Clinton during the 2008 election cycle. So the disagreement was whether or not that film was electioneering communications, quote unquote.
Got it.
Which is a term. And it means any broadcast, cable or satellite communication that refers to a clearly identified federal candidate.
Okay.
So this was restricted for corporations nearing election time. So corporations and unions couldn't advertise for advertise for a candidate within, I think it was like 30 days before the election and 60 after or something. I don't remember exactly. Mm-hmm. For example, like a month before the federal election, Walmart couldn't air an ad telling people to vote for George Bush.
Right.
That's sort of like the long and the short of it. Because, and everybody in people's minds, it's like, because corporations have a lot of money.
Right.
So it's good to put limits on it. That's one argument. And this whole thing came up because that movie or that documentary or whatever, Fahrenheit 9/11. Mm-hmm. Fahrenheit 9/11. Why can't I always want to say Fahrenheit 9/11. It's been so long since I've like even thought about that movie.
I know.
That in my head, it's about 9/11. Anyway.
Yeah.
Fahrenheit 9/11.
I mean, the book that it's referencing is Fahrenheit 451. So.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's true. Yeah.
You'd be like, okay, 9/11,
yeah.
9/11. Yeah.
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 So the filmmakers of this film for Hillary Clinton wanted to know, why can Michael Moore run ads but we can't? Because that in their mind, he was basically advertising for Hillary Clinton or like against George Bush. Excuse me. The court said because he's media. Okay.
Right.
Complicated.
Right. Ooh, yeah, because, okay, media is a conglomerate as well, right?
And what's
it's
media?
not an individual free speech. He's supposed to be like a reporter or a journalist then, and that's...
Yeah.
But not because he's an individual, but because he's media. Okay.
Yeah.
That is complicated. Okay.
It's very complicated. So, Citizens United tried to... They basically said on the More Perfect podcast, they were like, so we thought we'd get into the documentary making business. And so they tried to frame their film as a hard-hitting political documentary.
Of course.
AKA media. Mm-hmm. But in the film, they're saying about Hillary Clinton, quote, she'll lie about anything. She's ruthless. She's cunning. She'll do anything for power. Congenital liar. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah. Congenital liar means it's like part of her DNA.
Yeah.
Right.
And then sorely lacking in qualifications. So these are the things that
these are all opinions. They're not hard-hitting political facts. Okay.
Yeah, and to be fair, Michael Moore...
Yes, he is an inflammatory filmmaker.
Yeah, like I haven't watched it in a while, but I'm pretty sure he...
I'm Bowling for Columbine, too. It's
right, yeah.
Very inflammatory, for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and you can couch that in facts, I guess, but...
Yeah.
Okay, I could go for hours about how Americans don't understand that, like, because opinion journalism is so much easier to do than true hard-hitting investigative journalism, that everything we're exposed to in the media today is opinion journalism and not factual journalism. It is so hard to find. I mean, Reuters and AP News do a really good job. Yeah. But the New York Times is opinion. You know, like CNN, MSNBC. I can't read them. I can't watch them.
I know.
Washington Post even. They do really great journalism, but so much of it is opinion journalism.
Yeah, and now they're taken over by Bezos, so I'm like, I have no faith in them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I was watching the election, it was so crazy because CNN, we were watching CNN for like half a minute, and it was just nuts because they were like, before anything was decided, the guy on the air actually said, oh, well, it's looking, better for Trump, but we've been here before and we survived. Wow. We were here last time and we survived. And I'm like,
this isn't news. Yeah, like, you're not reporting the facts. You're saying how you feel about this election. Yeah. Which, fair. I get it.
Yes.
But
I'm not doing your job.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we. Like, who's we? Because Jesus Christ, that is the least. That's the most biased thing I've ever heard. I think on
God, what?
It's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, extremely complicated. So as the more perfect, but okay, so I haven't watched this film, right? As the more perfect podcast puts it, if it looks like an ad and it smells like an ad, it's an ad. So these guys were trying to make their ad
look like a movie
appear as a documentary. It's not a documentary.
It's an ad, right?
Yeah. So then the case gets taken to federal court, and it actually loses, which is so interesting. So the federal judge decides, like, you don't really have a case here. So then it goes to the Supreme Court, and they take it on, and the Supreme Court decides to hear it. And so a little bit of background on the court. I was going to go through all of the justices then, but I didn't have time for that. But I guess it doesn't really matter now because they're all so different now. But
yeah.
So Sandra Day O'Connor had recently retired.
Oh my gosh, I remember that.
Yeah, like right before. And she was actually a more conservative judge. Yeah. She was replaced by Justice Samuel Alito, who is a conservative. He's still there. He was a conservative member of the court. And he voted down any campaign finance law that came his way. That was just like, that's been his shtick. I don't know.
If you're not watching on YouTube, I'm making the worst possible faces right now. Just
yeah. And it's really interesting because in their mind, in the conservative, well, we'll get into it. Like, it's very fascinating. Plus, Justice Anthony Kennedy was the swing vote in many cases. So, I think that might be a good time to take a quick break.
I think that's a good idea.
And I will do that.
I was trying to sneeze during the break and I couldn't do it. I thought I'd mute my mic and sneeze.
Come out, sneeze.
It's not happening. Okay.
That's funny.
Sorry.
I did figure out how to mark a clip. I just realized when you're recording. Anyway, that's not important for the listener. Okay. So, about Anthony Kennedy. The More Perfect podcast went into a lot about his life and his influences, and he was relatively moderate. He leaned liberal in some instances, like a lot of environmental or gay rights cases, he would swing more liberal. Mm-hmm. But then in other cases, he would swing more conservative. So he was like a true swing vote, which we don't necessarily have now.
Really have no.
Yeah, hang on, I gotta cough. Hey, I marked the clip, so I can cut it.
We can cut it. Yeah,
easy peasy. Okay, so and he was also really into the book 1984.
Okay.
AKA, he was terrified of totalitarianism.
Yes.
Which is so interesting because they have him in that podcast quoted like at least 4 times in different cases, quoting 1984. So he was actually like really into that book.
Do you think any of the Supreme Court justices today actually have ever read any fiction?
I wonder, has anybody like past the age of, well, okay, we have, but like,
nobody
I just
reads
remember
fiction anymore.
The CEO that like, have CEOs read fiction? Like, I don't know.
What world do you live in? Where
I know.
Everything has to be a nonfiction and like
a self-help book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is fine. I have plenty of them, but like, also.
Yeah, they're great, but that's like a diet of just cabbage, you know, like.
There's no fruit.
Yeah, you need some fruit.
And some sausage. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. Pasta.
Yeah. No, yeah. Because I remember, we were sitting in front of a CEO that I will not name who, and he was saying what book he's been reading. or what books he's been reading lately. And you were like, we had just met, and you were like, what about some fiction?
Yeah. Ever heard of any fiction?
He's like, the greatest leaders of how to lead and be a leader. That's the book I was reading. It's like, okay.
How to be a good dictator. I mean,
Yeah.
CEO. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, so Kennedy at least read 1984. And then the craziest part of the case, and this is where things truly went off the rails. So they're seeing the case, or like hearing the different arguments, etc., etc. And the justices start questioning the limits of the law that restricts corporate campaign advertising.
Okay.
So they start asking, like, what about a book or a DVD? Like, what about...
So why is an advertisement held at different standards than other media?
Yeah, or like a film versus like a book. Yeah, so like they were basically like...
Or a newspaper article or a...
Yeah. So they're saying, like, if somebody writes a book and the last sentence says, oh, and by the way, vote for this person... What? So I'll quote Kennedy. So he asked, you think if a book was published that was the functional equivalent of express advocacy is
stating outright who your candidate would be, right? Yeah.
Yes. And there's also, it could be banned. The government representative, the legal representative for the government, responded, I'm not saying it could be banned. I'm saying that Congress could prohibit the use of corporate treasury funds, which makes sense. Like,
yes,
that's a good argument.
Yes, I agree with that. You're not going to ban the book. It's just Walmart can't
use
print
their
1,000
corporate
copies
dollars
and send it out to everyone. Right?
Yeah, and the main crux is that they can't use their corporate dollars for campaign advertising.
Right.
So that's what they mean by treasury funds, like their corporate money. They basically had to go through a PAC before, because PACs have been around for forever.
Right. Oh, it's a political action committee.
Yeah.
PAC.
Yeah. Then Kennedy says, suppose it were an advocacy organization that has a book. Your position is that under the Constitution, the advertising for this book could be prohibited. He eventually responds, like after some back and forth, yes, our position would be that the corporation could be required to use PAC funds rather than the treasury funds. Fair.
Okay, yeah.
Kennedy says, and if they didn't, you could ban it. His response, if they didn't, we could prohibit the publication of the book. And so Jeffrey Toobin of The New Yorker was in the room, and he said it felt like a shockwave went through the room.
And everybody went,
yes.
Boom. It made that noise that all Marvel movies make.
Yes.
Boom.
Totally. Exactly.
I mean, every movie makes that sound now.
Yes.
That's when the aliens land or the nuclear weapon goes off or something.
100%.
Ooh. Okay.
Yep. So just everyone went cold, basically. And so that, I think everybody agrees that he fumbled the response. Fumbled that ball.
Curses.
Because it's like, basically what they're saying, what I've read is like, it not starting that response with the word no, you're screwing yourself.
Right.
Because
you're basically saying we're going to ban free speech.
Yes. Because that is what the conservative court at the time, and probably still today, has always advocated against. And they're terrified of it, and they're not gonna...
Unless it's pornography.
Right. And that's where it's so complicated, right?
Right.
Free
political speech, yes.
Yes. And so I think, at least in the mind of Kennedy, that response made the whole issue a lot bigger.
He swung. That was his swing.
Yes. And I don't know what he would have done if they had answered that better. I don't know. Because, so what was their decision? Obviously, it went through, but it was a 5-4 decision. Mm-hmm. So Kennedy was the swing vote. And they ruled that corporate funding of independent political broadcasts in candidate elections cannot be limited under the First Amendment. Basically, corporations can spend as much as they want to advertise for their candidate of choice. As much as they want. As much as they want. I just, still can't believe it. But it just...
I mean, because, okay, are individuals limited with how much they can spend?
No.
Right.
Not with, if... Oh, God, it's so complicated.
Right.
They are if they use PACs, but not super PACs.
Okay.
PACs still have limits.
Right.
Super PACs do not. Because, think about Elon Musk.
Right.
So, it's basically, you're not limited unless, and I might have this in here in a minute, but you're not limited if it is, there's a term for it, if it's, not directed by the political candidate, if it's of your own free will.
Right. Okay, so okay, so that's why you see those ads that come on where it's like, this was paid for by Marco Rubio, right?
Yeah.
His own committee pays for his ads. But if Walmart does it,
yeah,
it has to say paid for by the Walmart super PAC.
Yes. And the thing is, that's another reason that corporate spending has exploded, because super PACs made it, because there's no limit on super PACs, they can now sort of hide behind them. So they can they're called the craziest shit. Yeah. Make America Great Again.
Star-Spangled super PAC. Yeah.
Yeah. And it'll say that, but it's not going to say on
Walmart.
The political advert. Yes, exactly.
It's not going to say sponsored by Amazon.
Yeah. So even if this wasn't a thing, if super PACs allow that anonymity, and they have to theoretically
disclose their donors.
Yes. But I don't think I didn't really look into it, but I don't think it doesn't really work.
Who's enforcing it? Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and it's not, that's the other thing, is that what American citizen is looking at an ad?
Yeah. And then going
who paid
and
for it,
Googling.
and then being like, okay, who are the donors?
Exactly.
We all know.
Right.
Unless you don't care, which is fair, but we all know.
Yeah.
Who's donating to what, but yeah.
Yeah. I think it's called an independent expenditure or something. There's something, I have it here, but basically it has to be independent of the, but then there's this whole the court decided that won't create quid pro quo.
Okay. Sure.
Because it has to be disclosed. And it's
sure.
Because Elon Musk is a perfect example of not quid pro quo. There's no quid pro quo going on there.
Right.
Sure.
No, he's not definitely the president right now.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. He's not running Doge, though. That was the news that came out today. He's not technically leading Doge. Which,
what? Who the hell is?
Yeah, that's everyone was like, and so who is?
God, I hate everything.
No. Tell me about it.
So yeah, yeah, and I actually looked up a few super PACs because I was like, what do they actually spend? What are we looking at here, money wise? And it was horrifying. But from 2023 to 2024, because you can just look this up. I think it's on the FEC website. I can't remember where I found it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is it FEC or was it somewhere else? Let me look. Yes, FEC. So, the Make America Great Again, Inc. Super PAC had a total, independent expenditures. That's what it is. If you aren't affiliated with or being led by the political party, then, or the politician or whoever, it's an independent expenditure. That one by itself had $376,948,786.70.
Can't fund public schools, can we? We can. Oh my God.
$376 million in that one.
Jesus Christ.
So there's that.
What's wrong with people? What is wrong with people? Okay.
You know,
sorry.
I will say, because this is going to be a little bit shorter because we're cutting it into two, so that'll help. I will say one thing that actually like really helped me, and I'm not saying that there's any excuse for this bullshit, but it is a really interesting take that basically the Democrats for the last several election cycles, anytime we've been in charge, or even when we're trying to be in charge and fail, we, instead of presenting a path forward and a plan and like fixes and solutions and saying like, I saw I wish I could find, it's one of those that I saw on Instagram and
then
like
you're like,
forever gone.
Yeah, you can't even Google it again. Yeah.
No, it's so frustrating. But it's like a very smart take. Instead of presenting solutions, we presented, look at what Trump did.
Yes, it's whataboutism.
For years. And that's it. And it's like, of course, there's a reason Trump supporters also like Bernie Sanders. Not all of them, obviously. And there's obviously
some overlap. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, that makes a lot of sense because Bernie Sanders is one of the only people saying, like, here's a problem. You are right to feel this way. Instead of just like, look at what this dum-dum's doing.
He'll make it worse.
Right.
Rather than how, I have to, full disclosure, I'm not a Democrat. I am a registered independent. I have voted Democrat for a long time, just because our voting system is epically flawed. But I agree. I agree that it's this kind of political resting on your laurels.
Yes.
And this appeal to like, well, you're an idiot if you vote for him, and not.
Yeah.
It's not reasons to vote for us. It's reasons you shouldn't vote for that guy.
Right. And
then that just creates a vacuum of, well, then there's no one to vote for because you're not going to do anything. Absolutely. And I'm never going to say that. I mean, that is a problem. I agree. And with whataboutism, which is one of my least favorite logical fallacies, if you start pointing out anything Trump ever did wrong, people who love Trump will point out all of the corruption in Democrats and stuff. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's not what I'm talking about. I am talking about convicted felon, law-breaking. He has sued people for calling him a rapist. He has been charged with and found guilty of sexual assault. He has several...
He just let the New York mayor off on his corruption charges because he agreed to follow through with his ICE plan.
Right. And okay, yeah, maybe Biden was old and not making a lot of sense.
Yeah, Biden sucked.
But we're not I'm not comparing them. I am telling you why I will never vote for this man, Trump. I will never vote for him. And that's why. Yeah. And half of his cabinet is criminals, he wouldn't have anyone working for him if he didn't pardon them all. Like, is that not insane to anyone? And, Biden pardoned Hunter, it's like, yeah, I don't think he should have done that either. But I'm not talking about, I'm talking about why I could never vote for this man, Trump. And we can talk about how corrupt our entire political system is. It is fucked. But, like, the whataboutism really just shoots you in the foot every time, they're not comparable. I am sure that the Democratic Party has benefited from Citizens United, not as much, as much as the Republican Party has, probably, because corporations are inherently conservative. Because they don't want to be regulated, which is exactly what we're going through now with Elon Musk deregulating. Fuck the drinking water. As long as I can make Teslas and have no OSHA regulations, it sounds great. That's, of course, every corporation's going to want that.
Yeah, and then frame it as fraud.
Yes.
Oh, there's so much fraud going on inside USAID. It's like,
no, there's not.
I don't believe you.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Well, DEI is not fraud, for what it's worth. That's what they're claiming. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is not fraud.
They said it's fraud?
That's what they have been... We can talk about this. We're going to talk about this in our Patreon episode.
Yeah, you're right.
But
anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, our government is corrupt.
Yeah.
And it's silly to think that the Democrats haven't also benefited. they're all millionaires. All of them are millionaires. So why in the world would they have our interests at heart? And I know, we could say like AOC isn't a millionaire and Bernie Sanders isn't a million, okay, but they're very
AOC
small
might
minority.
be actually
By now.
at this point.
And so is Bernie is now too. I mean, that's the thing.
Didn't he give away his money or something?
I don't know.
I thought
but
he
he's
did,
made
like, something
millions of dollars off books. That's the thing.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely could be if he wanted to. He may have given away a bunch of it, though, I think.
Yeah.
But...
I mean, he's not poor.
Right. He's not destitute.
He's not like working class American.
No, for
but,
sure.
That's the thing is that anyone who goes, what is it my father used to say? Anyone who's willing to spend billions of dollars to get a job that pays you $250,000 a year officially, like, something's up with that.
Right.
That's a skewed priority. So,
yeah.
I don't know how much the presidency pays now. I think that was in the 90s when my dad said that. So it's probably $500,000 a year now.
I don't know. I wonder. It could be. Yeah.
But that's not. They're not making their money from the presidency itself or from their Senate. They're making it from the book deals and
the speeches.
Yeah. Totally. It is not a job you go into to become poor or,
Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
Yes.
Soapbox.
No,
Done.
I love it. I knew this was going to happen. That's why I was like, this has to be a two-parter because there's so much. So the decision overturned previous rulings, which had allowed restrictions on corporate political expenditures. The Federal Election Campaign Act of 1971 prohibited corporations and labor unions from making campaign contributions directly from their own revenue funds, so their general treasuries. However, corporations and unions could establish PACs, as mentioned, to make contributions, and they could use their treasury funds to establish, administer, and solicit contributions to the PACs.
Okay.
So that's the decision. That's the case. That's the end of part one. Next week, we're going to talk about what Democrats often say about Citizens United and what they get wrong, which is interesting. Like that money doesn't necessarily buy elections.
Oh, fuck that noise. Okay.
No, but listen, at least not in an outright way.
Okay. Right. You're not paying someone for their vote.
Yes, because lots of money gets thrown at losers.
It's true. Well,
so it's not like the person who gives the most or who spends the most on their campaign is going to win. Like, that's just not how it goes.
It's not one for one. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll talk about it.
Okay.
And it's not like politicians are just taking the money either.
Right.
At least before.
Well, they're not supposed to. Right. Yeah.
No, but it is... fraud and bribery and things like that are actually quite low.
Yeah.
It doesn't really happen.
I think that
often.
surprises people a lot.
It does. Yeah, totally. We'll also talk about how it impacts making any sort of headway in terms of climate change and some proposed solutions.
Okay.
Which is where it gets very complicated. But.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm excited. I'm
Yeah, no, this was a good chat. It was fun. It was like there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes a huge impact in a way that most of us don't see in our day to day.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll finish it up next week.
Do you want to do like a weekly win? We've been trying to have some positive. Yeah, go for it.
You start if you have one.
I
actually do have one, but
okay, do yours first.
Unless you can think of one.
I went to the doctor, even though I didn't want to.
Oh, there you go.
So, go team. That's all I'll say about that.
It wasn't so bad. Yeah.
I don't know yet.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm very iffy about doctors right now, and I don't want to. I've always been the person that's like, go get that mole checked, go get that, but just based on the experience I had with my mom in the healthcare system, and my father recently also in the healthcare system, has just made me very much like, I don't want to fuck with that shit. I don't want to pay an insurance company. I don't want to pay a doctor. I don't want to. I just want to go off into the woods and die at the age of 45. I'll be fine. Like, I don't care anymore. But go get your annual physical.
Yeah.
Get that mole checked out. Yeah.
and it's done.
Preventive care is worth it. Get those,
Yeah.
get those vaccines.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, so mine is, this is going to sound like really not happy, but mine is that I just want to give a shout out to my grandpa. We were talking
Yeah.
about him a little bit before the show, and he died today, which sounds super weird for me to be like, yay, 'cause
Yay, no.
that's not at all what I'm saying. But he just had like he just had such a way of living, and I just wanted to shout him out, because I went to visit him. He's 92, so he made it a very long time, and I'm 36, and so he got to see his grandkids be 36, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
I think about that, and I'm like, if I got that chance, what a blessing. So I went to visit him when I went to Indiana a couple weeks ago, and he, was basically, the way he worded it was, I'm on my way out, and because he had cancer and he knew it was coming. And I just think like it's just kind of amazing, because I really want that to be how I go.
It's
to be able to
admirable.
be like, I've lived a long life, I've lived
Yeah.
a really good life, and I'm on my way out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how amazing is that to be able to sit there and say that, and to accept it, and to be okay with it.
Or at least willing to embrace it, willing to come to terms with it. Like, even if it's scary and awful and you don't know, but like, he's not like, yeah, I'm gonna do some monoclonal something antibodies, like pretending it's not happening.
Yeah.
Or sticking your head in the sand, and that's really admirable.
I know.
And beautiful.
And not only that, but he knew every nurse's name, and like any person who walked in the room, he would be like, "Oh, Cassandra, how aren't you?
How are
about
the kids?
Yes, like, aren't you about to end your shift? I thought you were already gonna be done for the day." So like the hospital staff was in love with him, and he moved to a nursing home for his last month, and the staff was so obsessed with him that they all were like, he used to paint and draw, and they took some of his paintings and his drawings down there because he made so many friends, and because he had been there for a long time when my grandma was there. He like went and started a ministry and just like made friends with these people, and it's just like crazy. And I told Kat this funny story, but I wanted to share it with everybody. But my brother went to visit him maybe a week and a half ago, and he said, it's just so typical, but he said, well, I'm glad that you came to visit me, but I'm going to bingo. So I got stuff to do.
He's got a life to live, you guys. He's not gonna have any of this maudlin sitting around crying bullshit. He's like, bingo. It's so good. It's so good.
It's so good. I was like, man, I hope that's how I go. That's amazing. So I'm glad he had a really fulfilling, and there were quite a few other veterans, because he's a Korean War vet. So there were quite a few other veterans there. So he got to just have like this camaraderie. That my aunt sent me a picture of, just like a bunch of old dudes in wheelchairs that were like his welcoming committee. It was just so great. I don't know. So it's definitely sad, but it's also like really inspiring and like nice and touching.
Grateful.
Yeah.
Just a lot to be happy about,
Yeah. So, and it's
What
very
an
different when
example.
somebody's 92 than when they're like a lot younger. So
Yeah. No, I'm happy. I mean, I'm happy for you that it was a good death.
yeah, and it can happen.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad I got to see him. So
Yeah.
So that worked out. So anyway, there's mine. Shout out.
That's good.
Herschel.
I was gonna say, what's his name?
Shout out Herschel.
R.I.P. Herschel.
Isn't that the most
It's not.
grandfather name?
I think if I ever had a child, I might name him Herschel. Herschel
Oh,
Kermit.
Hershey for short. How
Little
cute
Hirsch.
would that be?
Little Hirsch.
Hershey. Yeah. So, and Charlie has a little, just sort of by happenstance, got this little pony stuffy that was in his house, and so she loves it now, and it's like one of her faves.
Sweet. Yeah.
So I'm like, that's from your great grandpa.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's mine. So
Awesome.
end on a good note. I mean, kind of
Bittersweet.
bittersweet. Yeah, but you know, life's still happening in the midst of democratic chaos. So
Yeah. Yeah, we're working. We'll probably actually put this episode out after the Patreon.
Oh, probably, yeah.
Yeah, so if you haven't subscribed to our Patreon and you want to, we're going to go complain about everything that the current administration is actually doing to affect our lives personally.
Yes.
So if you want to, we're at patreon.com/.
You just want to commiserate. Sometimes you just need to commiserate.
We did therapy last time, so this time we're doing like, no, what's really happening, you know, because I think a lot of it is very kind of like, well, maybe this thing could happen. It's like, no, here's the literal things that are happening to my family because of this administration.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
All right. Well.
Okay.
I think we should end every episode with good night and good luck.
Truly.
Oh my God. But yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. So head over to, like she said, Patreon or Instagram at Greening Up My Act, and we will
check out our bird videos.
Yeah, I posted a bird video. It's true.
That's great.
That was pretty good.
All right. We'll see you next week for Citizens United. Take 2.
Take 2.